everyone. Welcome to today's live stream. I am talking about a question that I receive a lot, mostly because we raise Nigerian dwarf goats. And so, whenever I post a picture of a doe that has quads or quintuplets, one of the questions that inevitably comes up is, can a doe feed that many kids? And we have had 8 sets of quintuplets, and the way that we manage these things has changed dramatically through the years. In fact, like a lot of people, even when we had quads or triplets, we just assumed that the mom can feed them. The old thing, the very old fashioned way, and you still see a lot of people saying this, is like, oh, just feel behind their ribs and see if their belly, their little belly should feel like there's a golf ball behind, at the end of their ribs. And that means they're getting enough milk. And that's really a super primitive way to do things. And it's not very accurate at all. So what we started doing about 7 years ago was actually weighing our kids. And a lot of the research on goats and stuff comes from huge farms and people who have a big business doing this. And so I'm going to tell you right up front that if you have 100 goats or 100 sheep, that this may not be practical for you. But I really don't work with hardly anybody that has that many goats or sheep kidding or lambing every year. I am working with people who have 3 or 4, maybe 5 or 10. And this is even totally doable if you've got like 15 goats that are kidding, especially if it's not all within a week or two. So basically what happened was that about 7, 8, well, it's gonna be 8 years ago now, I smashed my knee and it was swollen the size of a football. And what had happened is the year before was when our youngest daughter had gone off to college and my husband had never helped with goats before. So, his idea of kidding season was running through the barn on his way somewhere and saying, "Oh, how many kids did you have? How many bucks and does?" And that was it. He really did not know anything about goats giving birth, nothing. Okay. I used to joke that he didn't know the difference between a pastern and a pasture. And in fact, he saw me say that one time and he's like, "What's a pastern?" Like he really did not know. So anyway, I was laid up in bed with this busted knee. I could not walk at all. I could not put any weight on it. And so it was kidding season. And so he was stuck on his own out there taking care of everything. And we had this doe had twins, and it was absolutely driving him crazy because he did not see them nurse. And I kept saying, "Well, just feel behind their ribs, honey. It should feel like a little golf ball." And he is an electrical engineer, and you don't tell electrical engineers or any kind of engineer, I think, something as primitive and inexact as like, "Oh, just feel behind the ribs. It should feel like a little golf ball back there." So what does an engineer do when they want answers? They start collecting data. And that's exactly what he did. He started weighing all the kids that were born so that he would know if they were gaining weight. And this was an amazing education for me. At that time, we'd already been raising goats for 12 years. I thought I had all this under control, right? And so he starts weighing all the kids. And I started seeing some very definite patterns. And so now here we are 8 years later. I've got 8 years of data behind us. That's several hundred kids that have been weighed and followed. We weigh every single kid every day for the first 2 weeks. And then if they have doubled their weight by 2 weeks of age, we are happy. And at that point, we just weigh them once a week. I have very specific markers I want them to meet. We have Nigerian dwarfs. I expect them to gain about 4 ounces a day, pretty much for the whole first 2 months of their life. I will not sell a kid until it weighs at least 20 pounds. It became obvious to me super quick after we started weighing these kids. The ones I was worried about were the ones that were like 2 months old and 15 pounds. So, and then you can have other kids that are 2 months old and weigh 24 pounds. If it was a single, or if mom is a bucket busting milker, or heaven forbid, if you have multiples and one of those kids is just a big pig. I had somebody I was talking to about this one time. She's like, "Oh, my doe's raising quads just fine." And I said, okay, well, what do the kids weigh? And she didn't know, and they were 2 months old. So she went and weighed them, and their weight varied from 14 pounds to 24 pounds. Now, there is no way that that 14-pound kid is as healthy as that 24-pound kid. And that 24-pound kid is a little piggy who could have been separated, like overnight from his mom for a couple weeks already because he was clearly getting more than he needed. However, we actually like on our farm now, that never would have happened. What would have happened, um, is that that little kid, because that little 14-pound kid, this didn't happen overnight. Like that little 14-pound kid has been like undergaining forever. And so that's the kid that should have been taken away and bottle fed so that the three kids that were left could then nurse. And so the question of how many kids can a doe feed, first of all, it really depends on the doe because some does are better than others. If you've got sheep, this is true for sheep too. And honestly, unless polypays are supposed to be, mega milkers, that's like the whole idea behind the name. Most sheep don't do a great job of raising more than two. We've got Shetlands. We've raised Shetlands for 12 years. We've had Katahdins now for 5 or 6 years. They don't do a great job of raising more than twins. So it's really important that you weigh them if survival is important to you. Or if you've got 100 lambs or 100 ewes or does that are kidding and lambing every year, and fine, you don't have time to weigh 200 babies, but most of us are not in that position. I don't really, like I said at the beginning, I really don't work with a lot of people who have that many babies. So it is really not that big of a deal to weigh them. So we have a digital scale. I actually we have two digital scales now. I was super resistant to the idea of buying a digital scale to make soap, but once I learned that, like, yeah, you really do have to have a digital scale if you want consistently good soap. Um, I found that I used it for tons of stuff. And in fact, I used it so much, we were constantly going back and forth from the kitchen to the barn. And so we bought a separate digital scale just to keep in the barn. Once the kids get to be more than about 10 pounds, then we use our hanging dairy scale to weigh them, either putting them like in a sling or in a bucket, like a big 5-gallon bucket to weigh them and hang them on the dairy scale. If you have a hanging fish scale or anything like that, that will work too. And I'm super, super excited that I just found a dog scale a couple months ago that we can use to weigh all of our goats. It weighs up to 250 pounds. So you can look forward to seeing more data from me on goats that weigh more than 25 pounds or so in the coming year, because we're starting to like weigh does now before being bred and during pregnancy and stuff like that, because my husband has kind of turned me into an addict for the data. I'm like, I wonder how much weight a doe gains during pregnancy and things like that. And how much does she gain? Does she lose after pregnancy? And so anyway, we're going to be doing a lot more weighing of the adult goats because that was not very expensive. A dog scale is it was less than $100. A livestock scale, I don't think I've seen anything less than 700 or 800, and that's not what you need for goats. Like I said, for babies, we use a digital kitchen scale. I've got some videos all over the place, really. I've got videos on Facebook and YouTube and also in my kidding courses that show you how we weigh kids so that we track their weight. And it's really not hard to do. So basically, I want to see my Nigerians kids gaining 4 ounces every single day. If they do not gain 4 ounces, if one of them doesn't gain 4 ounces today, like it only gains 3 ounces, I expect to see it gain 5 ounces tomorrow, and vice versa. If it gained 5 ounces today and it only gains 3 tomorrow, I'm fine with that as long as the weight gain averages out over about 4 ounces a day. Now, obviously, with bigger goats, you're going to have bigger weight gains that you're going to want to see. If you have mixed goats and so like you're not really sure, how much they're supposed to weigh, you basically weigh all your kids and see, is somebody falling behind? Nobody should be falling behind. That's basically your goal. If somebody's falling behind, something is wrong. And this is where, like one of the things that just makes me cringe is if somebody posts something on Facebook, my doe just had triplets. Can she feed them all? And then people chime in and go, oh yeah, she could feed however many she has. That is so not true. There is no way that anybody can say that. That is absolutely not true. And if we believed that, we would have had a dead lamb last year. Since we are weighing everybody, and we've also started weighing our lambs, my husband came in when our lambs were 1 day old. This lamb was 1 day old. It was a single, okay? Like everybody's gonna go, oh yeah, they can feed a single, of course. Why were you even weighing it? Because here's why. He weighed that lamb and came in and said, this lamb hasn't gained any weight since yesterday. In fact, it's lost a little bit. Immediately, I am like, check that ewes udder. Something is wrong. Like, there's no way that she can't be making enough milk to feed a single lamb. And he checked her udder, and she had a raging case of mastitis that needed to be treated. And so if we had not been weighing that lamb, we wouldn't have known that. And we would have just gone out there in the next day or two and found a dead lamb and said, gee, I wonder why it died. And this is where some people were like, oh, well, maybe there was just something wrong with it. No, there was something wrong with the mom. She had mastitis. And so she couldn't produce enough milk. And so that we actually wound up, the mastitis did not clear up. We wound up bottle feeding that lamb, and the mom went to the locker in the fall. So, there's just so much good information. There's no way that you can get too much information. So it's really important that you weigh your kids regularly after they're born, so that you know if they are all gaining weight at an equal level. Because also you can have a kid that's just really not very ambitious. It's not always the smallest ones. We have had 8 sets of quintuplets, and I think it was about the 3rd set of quintuplets we had. I had learned from the first 2 sets that they weren't going, there's no way they can feed 5. And so I went out there several times a day with a bottle of milk and said, okay, who wants some more milk? And I started picking up each of the 5 kids to see who would take the bottle, who wanted more milk. And I went out there, I think it was the 2nd day I went out there, and one of the kids, the mama is over here, and 4 kids are like fighting for her 2 teats. And then there's one kid that's standing in the corner with her ears down looking like Eeyore. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my goodness, you look like my first bottle baby. And I picked her up and stuck the nipple in her mouth. And unlike most kids who've been nursing on mom who act like you're trying to poison them, she was very enthusiastic and was just, she was tired of fighting, I think. She's like, oh, this is so easy compared to what I've been doing, fighting with 4 siblings over those 2 teats. Like, I can have all the milk right now. And so she did great. And what was interesting about that is that she was the kid who was right smack in the middle. 2 of the kids that were smaller than her in terms of weight actually were more aggressive and trying to nurse more. They did not give up like she did. So the personality of each kid is going to be very different. Some of them are just going to give up. I call them happy to be starving kids, because they're just like, whatever. And they may be happy to be starving, but I'm not happy to have them starving. And so I'm going to make sure that they get fed one way or another. So if nobody has any questions, I'm going to sign off for today. I am doing these every single day this week at 5 o'clock Central Time in the afternoon. I've got my list here about all the topics I want to cover this week. And I think tomorrow I'm going to talk about house goats. You may not need this, but this may be something that somebody needs that or it may just be a way for you to get some information for next time somebody calls you and says they want to get a pet goat to keep in the house. Not a great idea, and I'm going to talk about why tomorrow. So if you're listening to this later and you've got any questions, feel free to post in the comment section below. I've also got a free kidding course that I just created. There's 10 videos in it, including videos of like birthing and feeding kids and checking tail ligaments and all that kind of stuff. So be sure to check that out. There's a link in the description of this session. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I will be back again tomorrow at 5 o'clock Central Time to talk about having pet goats in the house. Bye for now.